everyone, Miss Trenchcoat here, and I've got another book review for you. This time I'm going to be reviewing A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness, and you may be familiar with this novel. It was very popular about a year or two ago, and I still see it always featured out and about at Barnes & Noble. So I actually bought this on ebook because I really love ebooks, as you may have noticed from previous book reviews. And I bought this about a year ago because I was really interested in it. I had been seeing it everywhere and I really wanted to read it. It took me a really long time to finish it though, obviously like over a year. Most of the reason was that I was not so into reading fiction at the time that I purchased this. Like I said before in my kind of intro to my book reviews, I am much more of a nonfiction reader, but now I've been on this fiction kick, so I've been reading like everything I have that's fiction. So I definitely just like jumped in and finished this novel very recently. So I wanted to give you guys a quick review on it. Like always, I'm going to give you guys the summary of the book and then the way I felt about it. So to summarize, this book follows around a young woman. I would say that she must be in her 20s because she's a historian. Her name is Diana Bishop, and she is actually a member of the witch family, clan, whatever you'd want to call it, the bishops that are from Salem witch trials fame. And she is this really independent-minded witch who really does not like to use her powers. So she's really big on, she's a historian and she's not going to use her magic powers to advance her in her career. She wants to basically feel like she's earned it herself. So she's kind of turned her back a little bit on her witchcraft. So she's studying in Oxford and she's particularly interested in alchemical texts, which I really thought was interesting, but I'll get back to that later. And she recalls a book from the library called Ashmole, I think it was called 172 or 173. And the book is basically like a really ancient alchemical text that's supposed to be about kind of the creation of the universe. And so she recalls it, and as soon as she receives the book, she has this really eerie feeling about it. Like she thinks that it's been like tampered with magically. So she gives it a glance, doesn't really think anything of it, and returns the book back to the stacks when she's done with it, doing her research on it, obviously. After that, a whole bunch of crazy stuff starts to happen to her. Magically in Oxford, a billion different types of magical creatures just show up. And I should say there's really only 3 types, but there's tons of people who've come to Oxford for some odd reason, and really no one understands what it's all about until a little bit later in the book. But in this book, there's basically 3 classes of magical creatures. There's witches, vampires, and demons. And basically, they have 3 different sorts of personalities between them. And they're all different characters come up that are within those 3 categories, and obviously also humans, like regular old humans. So basically, Diana, once these weird things start happening, noticed that there is this very attractive vampire man following her around who happens to also be a very popular professor. And he basically kind of takes Diana under his wing in this very, very unlikely and like unsanctimonious sort of friendship where he's basically guiding her and protecting her because she's basically touched on something that's kind of turning the supernatural witchcraft world upside down. So as the book progresses, those 2 obviously fall in love and they figure out what's going on with, you know, this whole alchemical text and why all of these creatures have come to Oxford all of a sudden and are basically stalking Diana. And basically things happen in which Vampire Man has to protect his girlfriend Diana, the witch, who does not use her magical powers, and it all culminates with Diana basically realizing that she needs to start using her powers and that there's a reason why she hasn't been using them in the past, and it wasn't just her own choice. So that's all I want to say about the summary of the novel. Now let's jump into how I felt about the novel. First of all, obviously this book was coming out in a time, I think, right? All these books were coming out where this Twilight sort of vampire-y novel sort of things, these vampire paranormal romances. And I would definitely say that this is actually a paranormal romance. When I bought it, I didn't realize it was going to be a paranormal romance, and I don't know if it's actually categorized as such when you purchase it, but this book is really a romance between the witch and the vampire, although it does not start off that way. Once you get into the meat of the book, that's what this is about. So I liked the idea of the vampires and the witches having these powers and things like that, but when it really came down to this book, I really did not like it. And I know I mentioned once in another video, I wasn't sure if I was going to do a book review if I didn't have like a really positive thing to say about it. But I really am not into romance, like really goo goo gaga romance. And this book was basically just chock full of it. And I don't want to like spoil the book for any of you guys, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. But this started off as being really cool about this like historian, like independent witch, and she loves alchemy and she's studying this like kind of elusive text that, you know, people don't understand. And it turns into her being goo goo gaga over a vampire. Like absolutely goo goo gaga, I will die for you, blah, blah, blah. And it was really overdone. It really became basically the book I really at one point felt like was just a complete ripoff of Twilight. Now, I don't know when Twilight came out in reference to this, and I really don't care about looking it up, but I'm not someone who is interested in Twilight. Like, I've seen the movies, but I would never read the books because I just really can't stand that sort of ultimate love, like all that matters is the other person, like your entire life is wrapped up with them. Like, that's really not how the world works, and that's really not how love works, and it's, I don't know, it's a turnoff for me. So this book at one point basically became Bella from Twilight is a witch, and there's, I don't even remember the vampire's name, the boy vampire in Twilight. Jacob? No, that was the werewolf. Don't even know. The Robert Pattinson character, the vampire, was the male guy in here. It's all about like the girl, like, you know, feeling weak in one way or another, and then looking up to this big, strong guy who's like ridiculously good looking apparently. So yeah, that's what this book was really about. And it was really sad because it really could have, to me, been way better if she would have just, it's one thing if you have to have the romance in there, but it doesn't have to like basically take up the entire novel. Like really, it overshadowed everything else in the novel once they started getting romancy. So it was tough for me to get through this, even though I was on this kind of like ravenous hunt for fiction. I had to push myself to finish this book, which is a pretty long book. It's like 600 pages. So, you know, most of the book was romance, and it kind of made me gag. So that's my review. If you like paranormal romance, you will like this. If you like Twilight, you should read this book if you haven't, because you'll absolutely love it. It's just not something that I like. So I hope that was helpful for you guys, and I know it wasn't a positive review, but I try not to focus on really like so much negative. I mean, these books are very popular for a reason, but they're just not my style, and it's okay. You know, it's okay if a book isn't my style. It's okay if it's not your style. So I hope this was helpful to you guys, anyone who was maybe thinking about buying the book. I know it's 600 pages, seems a little formidable if you're not someone who likes to read that much. So if paranormal romance is not your thing, if going goo goo and gaga like Bella and Robert Pattinson, can't think of his character's name, but you know, going between those two, if you're not into that, you're not going to be into this book. Sorry, just not going to be. So that's my review. As always, make sure to like and comment, and of course subscribe so I know that you like what I'm doing. I see you right now. Look at the subscribe button. Click it. Click the button. Click, click, click. Click, click. You clicked it? Okay, I trust you. I trust that you clicked it, okay? So I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.